At what point in the season did you feel like Lawrence has to be doomed, if you felt like that at all? Did you feel like, oh, there's no way he can get out of here alive, so that when you read that script, you kind of were like, oh yes, this makes sense?
I was incredibly anxious about where this flawed guy was going to end up. And it's part of the fascinating thing about having a long relationship with a character and a story and an audience is you don't know where it's going to go. This is a very complicated, disappointing, morally human, potentially disappointing, morally human being. In my head, I was writing to myself. I was anxious about how to talk to them about it, but I was going over and over in my head. I've always had a very clear idea, model for this guy, Robert McNamara, who was the uh, guy who did a lot of damage in North Vietnam. In South Vietnam. It was a very bright guy whose brain obliterated his humanity, and he killed hundreds of thousands of people. And then there's the fog of war is you see that there is humanity, and they're trying to peek out. That was always my idea for this guy, and I kept thinking, why did I reach out so many seasons ago? Why did this guy go? Who is that girl? That impossible handmaid? And I think he was drenched in condescending misogyny, casual misogyny at that point. And to me, the whole arc of this was, why was I interested in her? Why did I go out on a limb for her so many times? And I loved my legitimate argument against the way she was doing this. Like, you can't just throw grenades and think we're going to wake up on a lesbian commune in Vermont. It's more complicated than that. I don't know if you've looked around the world, but democracy is not on the rise. Right. So I love that argument, but I wondered where he was going to end up. I was very obnoxiously anxious about this, and thank God, Bruce, Eric, and Yalin, before they started writing, I was like, they had talked about it, but I was like, I gotta know where this ends up, because if this guy we've already seen him become a victim to his ambition before. We've already done that. That was me before you met me. What I in my paranoid actor way was like, we've already seen that. If that's where we're going, just ambition and power. And I had this amazing meeting with them, and they're like, you want to know what happens? This is way before they started. And they go, this is what happens. And we were in a Chinese restaurant. I was like, oh, thank God. Go right.
I kind of also asked it just from the standpoint of like, to see the performance in various places, because I feel like there was so much defeat when you're giving Ever the book, when you're saying like, make sure she learns. And in my head, I'm like, why would he trust Naomi to teach this kid the right things, But so to me, that's like, oh, he's accepting a certain kind of fate, not fully knowing exactly what would happen to him, but knowing like, oh, this isn't going to end well for me.
I mean, one of the redemptive but still disappointing aspects of this character to me is it took the death of his wife for him to, for those consequences to hit home personally, which is always something that frustrates me about politics. That I know people who lost kids to gun violence, and we leave the solutions to gun violence up to the traumatized victims of it. But and they understand that frustration. They have shame about, it took this, since she died. I think I have been in a space, whether I articulated it to myself or not, of a kind of a recklessness that I didn't care about my death. And I think that there is a sense, I love that moment with Ever, the humanity in that insane marriage, and a bit of a connection. I had always thought too, part of Lawrence's backstory with Eleanor was the loss of a child. I love those opportunities to sort of connect with kids and in an unspoken way, really connect with Naomi.
I do want to like break down that final scene a little bit with you, just in terms of there's a lot. I mean, the show does it all the time. We're always like spending a lot of quiet moments on people's faces, watching reality sink in, watching the emotions take over. And I want to talk about the moment when he's on the steps of the plane, looking at June, realizing like, this is my goodbye, but I can't really say goodbye. Then going into the plane and having that scene with Max. I'm not assuming you shot that in order, but just in terms of how, like, where you needed to get yourself mentally to kind of have him be ready to kind of be a martyr, but not say anything to Nick, excuse me.
It was hard to shoot because I felt like my sadness about, I mean, that scene with Nick was absolutely the last thing that we would ever shoot. Okay. And it was with Max, who means a lot to me as a human being and an artist, and it becomes really mixed in a confusing and wonderful way, because I'm saying goodbye to Lizzie. Lizzie means a lot to me in my life. It's one of the fascinating things about that relationship is it mirrors my relationship with Lizzie, where this kid, on the set of West Wing, who I remember very clearly, because I worry about kids in show business because it's not emotionally healthy for me. And I remember just thinking, wow, this kid's great. Like, this kid wants to be here. And and then she becomes, this sort of icon of the golden age of television. And then I get to work with her again. And I still have that kind of like condescension. And then and then very much like Lawrence did with her when he reached out for her. And then she's literally leading me in terms of on screen and off, in terms of a spot, seeing an actor really exert agency over an entire endeavor. So these things are like really loaded. The cliche for actors that is pounded into your head incorrectly, I believe, is you need to make a choice.
Right.
I actually don't. I really disagree with that. Because when you do that, you tend to flatten things out. And the most spectacular acting, and I've been very lucky to be up close and see it, and not necessarily naming people, but certainly a great example. I got to do something that was emotionally tricky with Meryl Streep, and I was like, holy shit, she's playing 5 pianos, and it opens up this idea of not making a choice, but it's nerve-wracking because you want it to be good and you don't know, it's just a neurotic swamp I live in.
But hearing you say that, how many choices did you give them in terms of how much regret he may have in those moments? Did you play around with him having regret? Not maybe for the choice of getting on the plane, but just overall, like, look at what my life has become.
Yeah, Lizzie was directing that. One thing with Lizzie is, I'm not just saying this to be supportive. I know nobody will believe that, but really an incredible director. Doesn't say much. In a situation like this, which makes sense. Like when I directed on the show, what do I have to tell Yvonne, Yvonne about, playing Serena? I mean, there may be an idea or something. And Lizzie's not hesitant about that. That scene on the steps, she was, that just happened and she was moved by it. And she got a couple of different sizes of it, but um, she loved what that was. You really never know what is going to play. You want options. And that was a moment where Lizzie was like, no, like that is what it is. Interior on the plane, it was a distracting night because it was Max and my last shot, of this incredible experience together. Lizzie's directing, it's all emotionally loaded. And she basically said, let him be Lawrence here too. It just opened it up for me. I think I was thinking exactly what I just told you I don't want to be thinking, which is how should I play this? And she was basically saying, let me turn the camera on, and watch the amoebas in your eyes and see what happens. Reminds me of a West Wing thing, like let Bartlett be Bartlett, like right. Yeah, just take the obligation off it.
His ending overall, I'm curious how you feel in terms of redemption, if you felt like he needed it and if you feel like this act allowed it.
Redemption was impossible, and he himself didn't think he deserved it. His abandon in the wake of Eleanor's death left him at a really with a kind of existential fearlessness about it, which changes how somebody gets on that plane. I found it a very tricky scene to think about and to shoot. And I'm very insecure about watching it.
I was looking back on it personally. Do you feel like he got redemption based on the act? Like you personally, Bradley?
Insufficient redemption.
Yep, that's fair.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the amazing thing about this show on many levels to me, the dynamic of June blowing on the spark of decency in all of these different characters. And it's a testament to the writing, to the original conception of June by Margaret Atwood, and to extraordinary acting, I would say, particularly with Aunt Lydia and with Serena, for those characters to retain the possibility of redemption is extraordinary. And I think it's where the hope, obviously this is a very dark series. It's a little too close to the documentary at this moment. And that hope, that possibility of redemption, and the only religious voices we hear are voices of condemnation and exclusion. It's amazing to me. And in a world in where forever, and certainly right now, a bastardization of Christianity is weaponized, as a means to power. My father fought World War II, and we were in Europe, and my dad, I remember I was a little kid, my dad and my mom were having an argument because my dad wanted to take us to Dachau, and my brother was 9 and I was like 7. And it was very, very powerful experience. And as a little kid, my dad was saying, he fought in the Pacific, but he was like, the scary thing is not that evil people exist, it's that we are all capable of it.
I find it so interesting because if we talk about, and I know the writers talked a lot about, like, could there be a good Nazi? And the answer is no. And I think the show does say that. And I think it says that in a lot of ways by this ending here of like, we're killing them. Like there is no way they're going to turn themselves.
Yes.
Even the ones like Lawrence who have done some good things, like there is no gray. And
right.
they're gray in other areas, but like, I think that's a really powerful statement, especially now, especially as you were saying, like on the backs of what we're experiencing in life. Like you can't give grace to Nazism, because if you do, it's a slippery slope, and then you end up as a handmaid, as a wife, as a Martha, as whatever.
It is just absolutely mind-boggling to me that when this show began, I was not on the first, but you know, when they started shooting in, you know, in 2016, and not to be too explicitly political, but the idea that women's access to healthcare would be weaponized was inconceivable. That Roe v. Wade would be overturned. I keep bringing up because I can't believe it, but it's Journal of the American Medical Association, 64,000 rape victims without access now. It is, you know, gone from far-fetched, you know, to, you know, way too close to home really fast. The scariest parts of the show when I was first watching it were those flashbacks, because it's the frog boiling, the loss, you know. And I think I have lived my entire life with the idea that democracy is inevitable and a more inclusive world is inevitable. It's extraordinary to me, you know. I had much older parents. You know, my mom was 6, 7 years old before women could vote. And I think we all have this sort of false idea that 10,000 years of socialization went out the window with the first Village People album or something. And already there's backlash to something we've only begun to acknowledge, which is extraordinary. And I think Margaret has said on several occasions that when she was writing this, she put it aside a couple of times because this is just, you know, nuts.